by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. Hi there, my name is Tercy Engelhardt, and I want to welcome you to the Unreasonably Grateful podcast, Living in Grace by Choice. So thank you. Thank you for being here. And again, Hannah, thank you for the intro music and the out music. It's been super helpful, and I appreciate that. So, however you got here, I want to welcome you and let you know that this is where you belong. I'm grateful to have you here. I always remind people that this particular podcast is about sharing tidbits of wisdom that I've gleaned over what is now my 39 and ongoing years of recovering from dealing with abuse as a teen and then living secretly, really, with the addiction of an eating disorder for 20 years. 39 years ago, I began my journey of kind of uncovering and discovering more of who I was created to be rather than the being that I had created out of a response or a reaction to my wounds, my hurts, the trauma, that sort of stuff. And so wherever you might be in this, I heard someone say recently, which I've said, but I wasn't sure other people necessarily agreed with it, that, we kind of define addiction as like a drug or an alcohol, but really, we're all addicted to something. And oftentimes what we're addicted to is the identity that we've created rather than the one that we were designed to be. So this podcast is really about tidbits of wisdom that we can take on and begin to unravel and uncover the amazing creation that you are so that you can begin to live from that place rather than a reaction to your life, your circumstances, the things you've been through, the things you hope you never go through again, like that. Okay? So I don't have your answers, you do, but sometimes we can hear in other people's story a clue or a hint that gives us some insight or encouragement or inspiration to take our own next step. And if that happens today, wonderful. That's my prayer. And if not, come back. Maybe next time you'll hear something. So take what works, leave the rest. And I'm grateful to have you here. So we've been in this series of how do we change? And it kind of started with, you can't just say, I'm going to change on top of you haven't cleaned up what's been behind you, what it is you're attempting to change from. And then last week we talked about shifting your environment, creating the environment that supports this new creation that you're stepping into so that it's possible for you to sustain it and maintain it given your day-to-day life and circumstances. And then today I want to talk about how do you identify what is or are the core or belief or beliefs that you're actually functioning from. So I want to dive into that a little deeper. Now, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but the reason I'm sharing this is I'm actually doing this work myself, and I've discovered something newly for myself that's giving me a new freedom, a new opportunity, not without the struggle or the pain or the suffering, because in my experience, new openings oftentimes come through a struggle or some pain, some loss, some experience of suffering. So for me, I'm halfway through the Lenten season, and it's really appropriate to be right where I am, which is beginning to take a deeper look at how do I step more fully into the being I was created as, and why I'm here and who I am. And it can be confronting to be in your 70s where I am and think, I don't actually know who I am. And I've done a lot of work over these years, but I'm kind of feeling like I'm back at square one again. And it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. I'm excited about the possibility of what's unfolding. So I want to share a little bit about that with you in the hopes that this week you'll take on looking to see what is or are some of the core beliefs or belief that your life is created from. So for myself, some of you know my story. You're welcome to order my book on Amazon if you want to know my story more, or order it through me on my website, teresaengelhart.com, and I'll send you a signed copy. And for me, if I look back as I'm doing this work this season, if I look back, I can see that early on, I somehow developed the story that I wasn't safe. Now I can see the events that led to that. There were these moments where I felt betrayed, not believed, um, disregarded. And I can see how that story became a belief of mine that I'm not safe. It's not safe. I'm not safe. And out of that, I developed this personality of I've got to pay attention. I've got to be careful. You can't say everything to everyone. You got to be selective, which could also be perceived as lying. You have to protect yourself, guard yourself. And oftentimes that became manipulating other people, circumstances, situations. All of these throughout that whole addictive 20 years of my life as well. And so I've been really looking at, wow, okay, so how I can see how that's impacted my life. I can see how it's created more of who I am. But if I let go of that, if I surrendered that, if I turned that over, then who would I be? If I wasn't coming from a place of, it's not safe, I'm not safe, then what? Then what would be possible? How would I respond? How would I show up? What are the choices I would make if that wasn't running in the background, influencing, impacting the choices that I even saw, let alone the choices that I made? So that's the kind of work I want you to do this week, is see if you can go back and identify what maybe were some of those core events in your life where out of that event you begin to invest in, create, and then substantiate a story, a version of something that happened that is, again, an interpretation of the event. May not be true, depending on whose perspective you're looking at it from. It felt true to you. It certainly felt true to me. But I've been functioning from that for just about as long as I can remember. So what are you functioning from for just about as long as you can remember? What's impacting your view of life and the choices that you make? And see if you can't begin to identify what that is. Okay, then the next step would be, what can you believe that would now begin to empower this created being called you that isn't a reaction or a response to that story? Who is that person? Who are they? And how might they respond? And then see if you can't create an affirmation, a belief, a line, a sentence of who you are that may feel foreign, or it may feel very familiar because it's going to resonate with some deep internal essence of who you are. And you begin to function from that story, from that line, from that affirmation, from that belief. And you can change that over time, but try one or two on, and see if you can't begin to identify yourself as coming from that center of you that isn't a reaction or a response to some trauma, hurt, pain, or loss. Okay. So that's what I want you to do this week. And I will be here next week. And I can't wait to see you then. And in the meantime, have a beautiful, beautiful week. Do the work. And I'll see you next week.